It's now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Caligiero. It's time for the Billy C. Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay. Today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Check out the website, salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week television network. That's right, you can check it out on all the major streaming devices like Roku, etc., etc., etc. Just go to Ginico USA, Giniko USA.com, and create a free account right now. It's not just previous shows like this one. It's all of the events we've been doing over the last over 15 years now. So check it out. It's got some great stuff. And speaking of events we're going to be doing, make sure you tune in next week for a huge announcement of an event we will be taking part in. I'm excited about it. You're going to be too. And I just can't talk about it until next week. So make sure you tune in for that. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by my book. Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold, and you can get a copy of this book right now while you're watching or listening to this very show. Just visit BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.com. Find out why I'm so adamant about getting Tom Molyneux's story told. Wait, whoa, you want a signed copy? Don't worry about it. Just go to the website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the book. Or if you're looking to get more than one copy and you want a special deal and you want it signed, just drop me an email, billy@talkinboxing, TalkinBoxing.com. Coming up a little bit later, we'll have Dax Khan joining us, as well as my man Alex Palli, and we will be discussing some of the fights from last night. I got a couple of emails, one specific email to read. Maybe a look at the heavyweight picture, breakdowns and predictions of the big fights next week, including Terence Crawford against Amir Khan, a fight I'm looking forward to. All of that's coming up a little bit later. Don't forget, get involved with the show. Send us a super chat through our YouTube chat room. Get your comments, questions, thoughts, opinions brought up live on the show right now. And do a super chat bid for a Talking Boxing with Billy C t-shirt, which I have right here. All right, let's kick it off with some of the fight results first. Of course, we're going to talk about Claressa Shields' victory over Christina Hammer, but the fight that I was kind of looking forward to, and the reason why I was looking forward to this fight was because I've been interested in the development of Jaime Munguia and, you know, his kind of quick rise. And it goes back to really the first time he was in the limelight when he was announced as a potential opponent for Triple G when the fight with Canelo initially fell out. And the Nevada State Athletic Commission and that gutless, spineless piece of garbage, Mr. Bennett, Bob Bennett, said that Munguia was not good enough for Triple G. And since then, he's been on a tear, winning a world title, etc., etc. Now, his climb has been a calculated one. And he stepped in the ring last night against Dennis Hogan. And Dennis Hogan, you know, a tough fighter. I really thought that this fight was going to kind of be a showcase fight in a sense for Munguia. I thought that this fight was going to be, yeah, okay, he could dismantle this level fighter, and no disrespect to Dennis Hogan at all. But the thought that was going through my mind was that Munguia was going to be able to dismantle Hogan and then cry basically, I don't mean him cry. I mean, like, just scream. I bet it's a better choice of words. Scream for a better opponent, a bigger fight. And instead, what we got was a fight in which I think the powers that be got the result wrong. I think Dennis Hogan won the fight. Jaime Munguia looked to me as a guy that it has punching power, but that's it. He doesn't have much movement. He doesn't his hands are down. He's very vulnerable for punches. He's not very fast. He's not improving. He's just not improving. Nonetheless, physically and record-wise, he improved last night to 33 wins, no losses, with 26 of his W's coming by knockout. It was a majority decision win. One judge had it 115-113. One judge had it 116-112. And the third judge, which very well may have had it the closest, at even, 114-114. I personally think Dennis Hogan won the fight 115-113. It was a close fight, depending upon what your thought is when you score. Munguia was clearly moving forward during the fight and trying to press the action, but you can't just win a fight and win rounds on scorecards just by moving forward. You got to land some punches. I thought that Hogan was avoiding a lot of punches, but because he stayed on the ropes a little bit, maybe that's why the judges leaned towards him. I'm not sure. At the end of the fight, Dennis Hogan said, I knew I won the fight. I'm really disappointed to have trained as hard as I did and for this to happen. We came here in good faith, and no disrespect to the people who scored this fight, but that decision shouldn't go through. This is bad for boxing. It's bad for me. And a rematch accepted right away, no questions asked. Everyone saw the fight. I was moving and landing more shots. Every time I knew I was being successful at doing that, his power didn't faze me at all because I'm moving and rolling with his punches, doing what I do. He's a great fighter, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew he was losing. At times he was acting desperate. I wasn't even worried that much, no disrespect, but I could take his shots, and I was landing more than him. Get the CompuBack box. Properly count the punches, you'll see I was winning the fight. I was comfortable in there. I don't pay much attention generally to the CompuBox stats, but I do know this. I do like to listen to some of the instructions in between rounds, and it was clear to me that Munguia's corner was trying to get him to throw more punches midway through the fight on, especially the last 3 rounds, and specifically the last 2. They kept telling him, you need these rounds. You need these rounds. You know, I mean, just to make it close. I mean, I don't know. Munguia at the end of the fight, he felt I clearly won the fight. He said I was always attacking and connected with the harder shots. But if he wants the rematch, we'll give it to him and even go to Australia. I don't know. We got to see some improvement with Munguia. That's my initial thoughts for sure. Also on that card, in the super welterweight division, junior middleweight division, however you wants to look at it, same division as Munguia, Patrick Teixeira, which I know I'm pronouncing that name wrong, and I have an email correcting me on other murdered names. I apologize, Patrick. But Pat won a 10-round majority decision to improve to 30 wins, 1 loss, and 22 of his wins coming by knockout. And he won the majority decision over Mario Lozano, who drops to 33-9 with 24 knockouts, 96-94 twice. One judge had it even, 95-95. Now over in the female side of the fight game, last night a big fight that took place for female boxing, and I think it was one of the most significant fights so far of the year. For women's boxing. Claressa Shields became the undisputed middleweight in the world when she beat Christina Hammer, hand in hammer, her first loss of her career, a unanimous decision to pick up 3 of the 4 major belts. Claressa Shields now has the WBA, WBC, and IBF titles. Claressa improves to 9-2 with 2 knockouts when she won a decision over Christina Hammer, who drops to 24-1 with 11 knockouts. All 3 judges scored the fight the same, 98-92. After the fight, Claressa Shields said she's the best female fighter ever. I don't know about that. I think maybe when it's all said and done, maybe, I don't know. She fights like a man style, which I love the way she delivers her punches. She was very elusive. I was talking to via email to my man Mitch, and he knew I was kind of leaning towards Christina Hammer a little bit. When you look at that fight, you look at the fight and you see Claressa Shields fighting aggressively, elusively, landing hard shots. She seemed very comfortable in there. A lot of times she seems jacked up a little too much, seems wild at times. She didn't seem that too much last night. But Christina Hammer was also kind of the perfect fighter to display that kind of, tendencies, so to speak. Christina Hammer fights clearly European / Klitschko brothers style. She stands straight up, tries to set up all her punches with a jab, and tries to utilize her height and reach advantage by setting up the distance. She likes to fight outside, which she did in the first round. In a sense, peppering Claressa Shields. I'm having a hard time saying Claressa this morning. Claressa Shields. But I think as that turned out, that was okay, let me see what you're going to do to me round on Shields' part, because Claressa kind of took over from there. At times it seemed like Christina Hammer thought that Claressa Shields was roughing her up too much, and she was. But hey, this is called fights. It's professional fighting. It's a fight. It's pro boxing. And unless you had to stand and throw jabs, unless that was in the rule, I thought Claressa Shields looked good. I don't know if I'm going to anoint her the best female fighter ever. You could make an argument skill-wise. Or maybe she was. Layla Ali was pretty damn good herself. And there was a slew of other great fighters, female fighters, that just didn't get the recognition that Claressa seems to be getting today. Nonetheless, she's one of the top pound-for-pound female fighters of today, anointing herself the best ever. I think that might be a little premature with a fighter that doesn't even have double-digit professional fights under her belt, although she does have a couple of gold medals in her trophy case. But anyway, some other fights I wanted to talk about on that particular card was Jermaine Franklin improved to 18-0 with 13 knockouts when he scored a 10-round unanimous decision over Rydell Booker in their heavyweight fight. Booker drops to 25-2 with 12 knockouts. I'm watching this fight, and Franklin was the favorite in this fight. Booker was a top contender, and then got himself into some trouble and sat in a slammer for several years, and is making a comeback. Both fighters, to me, gave a physical resemblance of what's bad with the heavyweight division. You think of heavyweights, and poof, you see these two guys in the ring, and they weren't as fat as Jarrell Baby Miller, but they definitely had some Tony Tubbs type physiques in there. I don't know. I think that's what, just getting off topic for a second, I think that's what really separates, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Dillian White. That separates those guys, Kubrat Pulev. And I say this because those are heavyweights that are in shape. They're big, strong guys that are in shape. What we saw with Franklin and Booker was two big guys, and actually Franklin's not even that big, but they clearly weren't in physical shape. Now, they obviously were in, as far as wind and doing their road work, they went 10 rounds, Booker was trying to keep the action, to a slow pace. I thought Booker was going to catch Franklin. You heard him a couple of times in that fight, and Booker was landing some great counter punches, and Franklin was kind of wild at times. I just think Booker ran out of gas and couldn't focus. If he was in just a little better shape, and he could have unleashed a couple of multi-punch combinations at several key spots during this fight, a couple of these rounds when he was, landed and seemingly hurt Franklin with a beautiful counterpunch. If he was able to follow that up with a barrage of punches and not just, pass out from exhaustion, I think he wins this fight. So it's going to be interesting to see how Riddell Booker moves on from here. Nonetheless, the way the judges scored it, 99-91 and 98-92 twice, I don't know if I can agree with those scores at all. Franklin was throwing a lot of punches, but I got news for you. Booker was avoiding a lot of them, or they weren't landing flush. And then when Booker landed punches, not only were they landing flush, they were landing with some impact. So I don't know. Again, I think it was an off night for judges throughout the boxing world. Also in the heavyweight division, Otto Wallin of Sweden fought Nick Kisner in their heavyweight bout that was scheduled to go a lot longer than it did. It was ruled a no contest after Kisner suffered a cut on his eye from an unintentional headbutt and said he couldn't see. Followed that all the way to the corner in round one. This was during the very first round. And the doctor's holding up fingers, and he's saying, McCheeseburger? The doctor holds up, how many fingers am I holding up? I think you got a cheeseburger in your hand. He's saying some really stupid stuff. Listen, I wasn't there, and I can't speak for Kisner, but, unless there was some damage done to the eyeball itself, yes, there was a cut. But there was not blood streaming in his eye, and he wasn't even giving his corner a chance to work on it. I think that Kisner found a way out of a fight with a guy that was going to beat the snot out of him. Not that Otto Wallin is a killer by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that Kisner it doesn't seem like a fighter to me at all. His brother fights. I mean, he just, anybody that goes into a fight with regular sneakers on, you have to wonder how much boxing they do. One of the first things you want to do when you start to box, whether you're just going in to train or whether you want to become an amateur or, do I even dare to say turn into a professional? I think, the first thing you buy yourself a pair of boxing shoes, man. You get yourself a pair of gloves. You may buy a crappy pair of boxing shoes at first and evolve into something nice. But that's one of the first things you do. From all my years in this sport, and, I'm pushing 34 years involved in this sport. The only guys that I've seen wear regular running shoes or sneakers, if you will, are fighters that aren't really fighters that don't really train, fighters that needed some extra money. Maybe they're tough guy, street fighters, maybe coming out of jail type fighters. They're the ones with the sneakers, not real fighters. So I don't know about Nick Kisner. Nonetheless, 21 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. 6 of his wins coming by knockout is how he walks out after that fight. Samuel Peter was making a comeback, and they put him in easy. They put him in against Mario Hirata, and he was supposed to win this fight. Hirata's 15-5-1. had been 2-5-1 going into this fight in his last 10 fights, or I'm sorry, his last 8 fights. Winning 2 and losing 5 and getting a draw in 1 in your last 8 fights. I'm not so sure that he should have won, but he did. He won a unanimous decision, 77-74, 76-75. One judge had it 79-72 for Samuel Peter. Not sure what this is going to do to his supposed comeback. 37 wins, 7 losses, 30 of his wins coming by knockout. He's still 38 years old, under 40. I don't know. I think he should keep it hung up, in my opinion. But anyway, that's what took place. We'll get some more thoughts on those fights when Alex and Dax come on in a little bit later. Speaking of pronunciation, I did get an email from my man Greg, and he says, "Okay, Billy C, it's pronunciation time again." He said Ryan Garcia's nickname is Kingry. Well, Kingry. Okay, he says, take the name Ryan, not just renounce the first row letter as if you're trying to say the name Ryan, so you pronounce it like rye bread. So the name, his nickname is, which is short for King Ryan. So it's pronounced King Rye, not Kingry. Billy, you are almost as bad as that mayor or governor in Boston. He's got you by a mile. Okay, so it's King Rye. I got you, not King Ree. I see. What do you think? I say to people all the time, why do you think I call, why is it Billy C? I can't even pronounce my own last name. So I appreciate my man Greg for helping me out there. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about the heavyweight division because there was a couple of heavyweight fights last night, and I couldn't help but think, how the division is with these couple of heavyweight fights that we saw. Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Dillian White, Alexander Povetkin. As of this morning, that's what the computer punches out as the top 5 in the heavyweight division. I'm not so sure I could argue with that. Jarrell Miller at number 6, that I argue. Luis Ortiz at number 7, I could see him at number 5. Kubrat Pulev at number 8, I could see him up. Miller, I don't even think Miller's in the top 10 legitimately. I really don't. Joseph Parker's at number 9. I think he's a legit top 10. Maybe even he should be up higher. Dominic Breazeale, who's fighting Anthony Joshua. I'm sorry, Deontay Wilder coming up soon. He's at number 10. Adam Koznowski, he moved up a bit at number 11. Then you got Chisora at 13. Andy Ruiz, who's fighting next weekend, at number 19. Hughie Fury is number 24. Lucas Brown, number 26. Captain Huck, who I haven't seen fighting heavyweight for a little bit, but he's still in the top 50 at number 31. Carlos Takam, he's at number 29. Brian Jennings, number 27. So, Jermaine Franklin is at number 44. And Daniel Dubois is at number 50. I know Daniel Dubois is on the rise, but he clearly is above Jermaine Franklin. So I don't know. I'm a little confused with the way the computer is starting to punch out. Like, their pound for pound guy is Canelo Alvarez. No disrespect to Canelo. Canelo's doing what I'm glad a lot of fighters. Let me rephrase that. Canelo's doing what I wish a lot of fighters would do, and that's seek out the top fighters. Now, he's not doing what most boxing fans want him to do, and that's fight Triple G immediately. But he is taking on a very tough Danny Jacobs in May, and that's doesn't justify him being pound for pound number 1, because clearly Vasily Lomachenko, who won on Friday, and which is a fight I forgot to even mention, to tell you the truth. But Vasily Lomachenko, I mean, he just looks like he's back to his old self again, dominating in his fight. I think that as far as pound for pound number one, I think that you could really make an argument that it's Vasily Lomachenko, or clearly the other argument is fighting next weekend, and that's of course Terence Crawford. But Vasily Lomachenko, who took care of Anthony Krala on Friday night, knocking him out. It's just when you watch Lomachenko fight, he's a pleasure to watch. I mean, that's the sweet science, boys and girls. If you think that, fighters, and Terence Crawford too. We're going to see him next week. But when people say that Floyd Mayweather displayed the sweet science, I laugh. If you want to see the sweet science in its true definition, go rewatch the Lomachenko Krala fight from Friday night. That is Vasily Lomachenko is the sweet science. This is a guy that is like you're building a fire. He starts off like just moving along. Timothy Bradley was saying it the best. He says he's accumulating data in the first round, and then you'll see him put his foot on the gas, and he certainly did. One of the most enjoyable things about Vasily Lomachenko is the way he can avoid a punch by pivoting and then be right there to land a punch. And by the way, boys and girls, that's the definition of the sweet science. Floyd Mayweather was very successful in making a lot of young fans forget the whole definition. The definition that's always thrown in my face to say that, fighters like Floyd are displaying the sweet science. And they say, Billy, see, it's hit and not get hit. And, a guy like Floyd, he's so defensive. He's so great. You can't hit him. And you say to yourself, well, that's because he throws a punch and then he backpedals and runs. And you can't hit him because he's, 10 feet away from you. But the key point here is that he can't hit you either. And the definition of the sweet science is hit and not get hit. And still be in position to inflict damage on your opponent. And that's exactly what Vasily Lomachenko does. He's right in front of you. You can't hit him, and he's counterpunching you as you're trying to throw punches. And guess what? Terence Crawford does the same thing. He's able to do the same thing. And I'm looking forward to Terence Crawford against Amir Khan. I'm going to break that down and give you some of my opinions a little bit later in the show on that fight. And actually, next week we got a bunch of good fights to talk about. Terence Crawford, Amir Khan, Danny Garcia against Adrian Granados, Andy Ruiz against Alexander Dimitrenko in the heavyweight division. A couple other heavyweight fights, Dave Allen against Lucas Brown, and Derek Chisora against Sunid Gashi, all coming up next week. It seems like, with the exception of the Terence Crawford fight, a heavyweight weekend. But Vasily Lomachenko, the definition of the sweet science, in my opinion. And we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're scheduled to have Dax Khan on, and we'll see what he thinks. Vasily Lomachenko, the definition of the sweet science? Is it when you punch it up into the dictionary? Does a photo of Vasily Lomachenko and Terence Crawford appear? Because I got news for you. Terence Crawford and Vasily Lomachenko on my pound-for-pound list, they're tied for number one. I can't quite say who's number one. If I had to only have one, the only reason why I would put Vasily Lomachenko at number one is because he fought last night. So he's got the more recent win. But I can't. I think they're up there. We'll have to wait to see if Terence Crawford lost a step against Amir Khan next week. I just don't think so. We'll be back in 2.
Billy C will be right back.
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system breakdown bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service people? Last year alone, we saved our customers over $120 million. Don't wait until something breaks and you're stuck with a huge bill.
You save a lot of money. It's absolutely worth it.
If you don't have First American Warranty, get it.
Call 1-800-946-6234 for your free no-obligation quote.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt, the innovative technology to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604. Listen to this.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Are you
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system breakdown bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service people? Last year alone, we saved our customers over $120 million. Don't wait until something breaks and you're stuck with a huge bill.
You save a lot of money. It's absolutely worth it.
If you don't have First American Warranty, get it.
Call 1-800-946-6234 for your free no-obligation quote.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt, the innovative technology to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts! Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C Show. The Billy C Show. And joining us right now, despite him, trying to show my age, and he's calling me like a Matt Dillon from Gunsmoke, okay? He thinks Kitty's going to be the next guest coming on, but joining me right now is my man, Dax Khan. That was kind of mean, man. I mean, come on, man. You didn't even give me a chance to start with you first.
Calm down there, Festus.
Yeah. that was funny, I got to admit. But anyway, let's start off with the first fight that I want to talk about from Friday night, Vasily Lomachenko. I was saying before break, to me, and I know you and I have talked about this many times, but to me, I love watching this guy. And if every fighter fought like him in terms of, I'm an example of the sweet science, boxing would be so entertaining. I mean, granted, he was fighting who he was fighting, but I loved what I saw. What was your thoughts on the fight?
First, he was fighting who he was fighting. Make no mistake, Anthony Crolla he's a world-class fighter. People forget he's a former multiple-time world champion. He had some great fights with Jorge Linares when Jorge Linares was at his peak. But, Vasily Lomachenko, he just does everything well. There's nothing that he doesn't do well. If anything, Vasily Lomachenko lacks punch, and not so much that he lacks punching power, but because he doesn't concentrate on just knocking guys out. He concentrates on his footwork, he concentrates on being hit, not getting hit, he concentrates on the combinations, the angles, that all together, when you see that thrown in as, one complete package, yes, it's very impressive, and Lomachenko does all that well. It was funny that leading up to the fight, he kept saying, I'm having a hard time getting up for this fight, meaning, he was having a hard time, finding himself being enthused to perform in against an opponent like Anthony Crolla. If that is not getting up for the fight, if that opponent doesn't get you excited, I hate to see what happens when, his opponents do get him excited, as we've seen in the past. One last thing about Lomachenko. what a lot of people don't notice, and it's very subtle, just like his skills and his abilities in the things he does, he kind of has this mean streak in him, and he's a master at mind games if you really pay attention to the way he goes about things. He never comes out of his mouth and says anything quite rude. He never comes out and says his intentions, but he always hints towards them, and he pulls them off out into the ring. And I think him saying that he couldn't get himself up for an Anthony Corolla, I think that was a mind game and more or less a message to these other guys like a Mikey Garcia and a Gervonta Davis that, you know what, I want you guys, without actually calling them out and falling into that trap.
You know, Dax, you say something that really solidifies my opinion of why I think Vasily Lomachenko and Terence Crawford are so alike. In a sense, because TC does the same exact stuff. He's a guy that is very respectable outside of the ring, at least talking during interviews and stuff like that. I've never seen him non-respectable unless you are watching him in the ring. And he too has a mean streak that comes out. And I know you agree. When we're talking about mean streak, we're not just talking about somebody that just lets their hands go. We're talking about somebody that mentally has a switch that can go in with that seek and destroy. I don't care who is in front of me. I'm taking you out. And that's what I think Vasily Lomachenko and Terence Crawford both possess. What's your thoughts?
Well, and what also separates them from a lot of other guys, and also, in my opinion, hurts them in a marketability standpoint, is the fact that they do that when they're fighting. They do that the night of the fight. When it's in the ring, it gets turned on. When the fight is over, it gets turned off. That's their job. That's their trade. That's their profession. It's not an act. That's who they are. And we don't see a lot of that in boxing anymore. I know Coach, who might be in the chat room tonight, he might not, where he always stresses that, boxing is more WWE than it is substance with a lot of these guys, and he's absolutely correct. And with Terence Crawford and Vasily Lomachenko, there is no antics. It's all substance.
Right. They let their actions speak for themselves inside the ring, right?
And yes, and Terence Crawford has been very vocal, in fact, in stating he will not go out there and take himself out of character and do things to impress others or because a promoter wants him to. He's nobody's puppet and he's not on a string. I think we spoke about that last week or the week before. So he's very true to himself. He's not going to be told you have to act like this or perform like this. It's what happens in the ring, and what happens out of the ring is totally different. Same with Vasily Lomachenko, and that's what separates them. And again, it hurts them in a marketability standpoint with today's crowd. If this was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it'd be a total different story. Nobody would even be thinking about anything but what takes place between in the ring, in the ropes, and outside the ropes.
You know, the funny thing is that I think, and I'm sure people are going to disagree with me here, but I think that the biggest problem for both those fighters, and again, you triggered something in my aging mind, Matt. But the thing is when you look at these two fighters, both under the tutelage and promotional banner of Top Rank, you know what, Dax? I think that Bob Arum. Now, I'm not saying he did it purposely, but I think that Bob Arum and his path that he chose, especially for Terence Crawford. Lomachenko, has I guess, I don't know. It's very similar for both of them. I don't think they've been given a chance to build up to become that marquee fighter like say a Canelo Alvarez has. If you recall, TC was put on a pay-per-view early on. Lomachenko was in a title fight early on, and I think it lost some of their marketability that you mentioned. Today, the thing that keeps both of them in the discussion is because of how good they are, and they're only known by the diehard boxing fan. The casual fan who knows who Canelo Alvarez is doesn't know these guys, and that's where I think the problem lies.
And again, a lot of that has to do with the era that we're in, and Bob Arum's age is a valid point. Bob Arum is an old school type promoter, and he hasn't really switched and evolved, to adapt to this generation. Bob Arum is doing exactly what he did in the 80s, 90s, 70s that he's doing now. He's very successful at it. He's creating a lot of quality cards. He has a lot of great fighters. But in terms of marketing or doing what these younger fans want and putting on the type of antics that they want. Bob Arum doesn't go out of his way to do that, and neither do any of his fighters, and so that's the difference. And if Don King, if he was still in the game, more or less, I think we'd see the same thing with Don King. He would do his job as the promoter. Bob Arum does his job as the promoter, and the fighters do the fighting. But, you know, today we don't have enough you say it yourself, enough promoters promoting, and so the fighters are promoting themselves, and they don't know how to promote themselves, and that's why we have these foolish antics all the time.
Yeah, shock factor is all they know.
But the young fans love it. They eat it up. They love it. You know, it's a YouTube world, as they say.
No, you're right. Some other fights let's chat about. I don't know if you got to see it, the Jaime Munguia fight against Dennis Hogan. I don't know, man. I mean, Munguia was the aggressor, but I thought Hogan squeaked out that fight. Not even squeak. I thought he won. Even trying to give Munguia rounds, I still scored it 115-113 for Hogan. Munguia, I just don't think he's getting better, Dax. I think we see the same guy, and I'm not sure he's ever going to get better. I think they're just getting him ready to feed him to either Daniel Jacobs or Canelo Alvarez down the road.
You know, leading up to this, a lot of people are saying, who is Dennis Hogan? And myself, the only time I remember him is a loss to Jack Colque on, I think, an undercard of an old Rob Brandt fight. And I think he fought Tyrone Brunson one time. Really, other than that, I could not. I had to actually box wreck him. But he did have that minor WBO title, which is what placed him in line for this. And you're absolutely right. I think that Dennis Hogan won that fight last night. Jaime Munguia, he really, prior to the Saddam Ali fight, without looking him up, nobody out there, can really say, oh, I remember him from this fight, I remember him from that fight, And when he came out there, he won that title. I think that his team kind of rushed themselves. They jumped ahead. They all of a sudden thought they had another Canelo, or, as I was talking with somebody last night, perhaps maybe more of a Fernando Vargas type fighter that was going to go in there, use his size and his pressure to dominate the division, except he doesn't have those basic fundamentals, because up until the Saddam Ali fight and since the Saddam Ali fight, they haven't raised that level of competition and kind of rounded out the level of competition that's going to allow him to learn how to cut off the ring and allow him to deal with different types of situation and different types of fighters. So until he does that, he's going to have to leave the 154-pound division soon. He's obviously outgrown it. The good news for him is he's 22 years old. He does have time to develop. But again, with his style, with that lack defense, and that really packed middleweight division, that is not a division you want to grow in terms of skill-wise, especially when there's all those top fighters in there, and you're going to be fighting at that top level. Your career can end up very short. Rather than a Fernando Vargas, you can end up like Francisco Bajado.
Francisco Bajado, I loved him.
Yeah,
he's a. You know what? That's a great example. That's a great example, Dax. Sometimes you actually come out with some good stuff, man, and not just your comedian things. But I agree with you. Except, and I agree with you about Munguia. Having a hard time making a weight and everything. I agree with your breakdown of his skill set or lack of, but I don't think that's something. I know he's young, but you think that he could learn to keep his hands up? Do you think somebody could teach him how to deliver a punch faster? I mean, those are the two elements of his game that I think are going to fail him at the bigger weights or even at the upper levels of his own weight class. I just don't see his power being able to handle it because of his chin. I just think he's going to take too many punches. I shouldn't say his power handle. I mean him relying on his power. It's almost like Deontay Wilder-esque. He's got punching power and he's just relying on himself to withstand what his opponent can dish out, and then him land the KO punch. It didn't happen last night.
He doesn't really have brutal punching power. It's that nonstop pressure. What he needs to develop, on top of that footwork and learning how to cut the ring off, he needs to develop himself a signature punch, meaning that one punch that when it lands is usually a fight ender, because he does have power, except he really doesn't sit down on his punches. You say, can he develop? Canelo Alvarez, When he entered the sport and he became known, here in the United States, he was a more polished fighter. But since then, look how much he has developed. And Munguia is 22 years old. Yes, of course he can develop into a more complete fighter. He just needs to have the right people behind him willing to help him develop into a more complete fighter. Look at the Canelo today compared to the Canelo 5 or 6 years ago. A totally different fighter.
Yeah, but his biggest weakness is still there today, with the way he's got to, almost plant his feet before he lets go. Power punches. He still wins, and I'm with you. He's gotten better, and he's an elite fighter. There's no question about it. But in any event, speaking of elite, Claressa Shields made no mistake proving that she was the best middleweight in the world in the female ranks by beating Christina Hammer last night in a total dominating fashion. What was your thoughts on that fight?
Well, she has definitely, at least last night, she definitely showed a lot of improvements in being composed in there. She didn't swing wild. There was a few times where she let it get away from herself. Even though she was dominating so much, it didn't matter. Christina Hammer, of course, she's a long-time world champion, but very basic European fighter. That 1-2 is what she relied on, and if she was able to keep that jab going and pumping, it might have been a different fight, though Christina Hammer doesn't really have any power behind her. The future for Claressa Shields, if she continues to improve that way, is going to be bright. The down things on Claressa Shields is she needs to, one, separate herself from Andre Dirrell, who seems to be attached to her by the hip. I don't know why. Maybe because that's the closest he's ever going to get to a world title, is carrying one of hers to the car. Claressa Shields needs to change her behavior. She needs to stop dating back to the Andre Dirrell and Jose Uzi-Katui fight, where she was seen pointing and laughing when Leon Lawson sucker punched Uzi-Katui. She needs to stop spitting at media members. She needs to stop cursing all the time. The night before the fight, she was up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning on Twitter because I was on there. She was telling fans to shut up. She was insulting fans because they said, keep your hands up, stay composed, telling them you don't need to tell me how to fight. Somebody needs to tell her, teach her how to talk. And I don't want to hear, well, that's not, taking herself out of her character. You know what? Female boxing right now is on the rise. It's on a surge. A few years ago, when you heard me speak about Claressa Shields, I said, she very well could be the face of female boxing worldwide. Boxing itself has changed since then with all these streaming platforms. Now it's a global sport once again with a global audience. A global audience doesn't want to see somebody acting like that continuously when it comes to the sponsorship money, when it comes to other networks and these streaming platforms having her on there. She's going to find herself coming up on the short end of the stick because you have people out there like Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, and so on. I don't know why the other day or last week, for some reason, 4 times she said she was going to make history last night. She did, in a way, being the first unified female middleweight champion, but she stated that she was the first female unified middleweight unified female champion in boxing history, period. She also said that she was going to have the most belts in boxing, period. And it's, listen, I don't know. You called out Cecilia Brackhouse last night, who was the first unified champion, and Amanda Serrano has won titles in more divisions than you have had fights. So she really needs to have her overall, her attitude change. She's not even the same person as she was a year ago when she was on the Nickelodeon Kid Choice Awards. She's not the same girl she was down at the Women's Boxing Hall of Fame when she sat on there with you. She's not the same person that I met over at the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and her act is going to get tired real quick, and when all said and done and everybody else is gone, she's going to look back and say to herself, why did I follow the wrong people?
A lot of fighters do that. Hey, did you hear the rumor I heard that, speaking of Amanda Serrano, that she's going to be fighting Heather Hardy?
That, not really a rumor. I think, for years we knew that was going to happen. Both of them are from the city. They actually know each other. They support each other. They're in the same division. It's a huge fight. So, no, it's not really a surprise to me. And I honestly thought it was a matter of when. Now that Heather Hardy has that featherweight title is, obviously the right time. But a huge fight for Heather Hardy, for Amanda Serrano, would be that Katie Taylor fight, and that would be a pay-per-view that would sell very well because Amanda Serrano has a huge Puerto Rican fan base, a huge fan base, period, as does Katie Taylor, and that would actually be a mega fight, and both of those would, make 7 figures, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's a big fight. I've totally grown to love Heather Hardy and the heart that she displays, and you can't deny Amanda Serrano's skill set. I've had the luxury of calling a couple of her fights, so I'm looking forward to that fight. Speaking of,
like I said, just kind of, I don't want to hear from anybody later on telling me, oh well, I have nothing against Claressa Shields. I like her. I just see her going down the wrong path, just like we've mentioned with Errol Spence at times. Get back to the path that you were on, and she will be the face of boxing. At this stage, she's not going to. She's going to end up like a Darrell.
No, listen. Everything you've said, I didn't disagree one bit. And the truth sometimes hurts, and people have to look at it. And it's obvious to me that she has gone down the wrong road, and for being such a sweet, I met her personally, and she was a sweetheart. And you're 100% correct. She has chosen to hang around with people that don't do the right thing all the time, and their past speaks volumes. And I've always wondered why fighters choose to do that. What gravitates them towards negativity when there's so much success with positivity? But anyway, I guess the squeaky wheel gets people to listen. But
yeah, you know what? These other guys in the past, Bill, that have done it already had that big money behind them before they started doing that. Floyd Mayweather had a lot of money before he started doing that. Mike Tyson, the same thing. Muhammad Ali had already had investors and so on and so forth before he started screaming and shouting how I am the greatest. It's different. Again, a lot of that has to do with the fighters having to promote themselves, and you're not promoters, you're fighters.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Muhammad Ali, you see, there's a big, you see, I think that fighters today try to copy Ali's approach to promotion and all of that. But the big difference, and the reason why I would never really look at what Muhammad Ali did as negative, even though I did at the time. The truth of the matter is he backed up all the shenanigans, Dax. Half these guys and girls, whatever, the women fighters that talk smack, they don't even attempt to back it up. Ali did. That's the big difference. And if somebody's going to, it's not that I'm against smack talk, by no way. It's when somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to go for the knockout. I'm going to do this," blah, 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 and then they run and they hide and they do this, they do that. That's the difference, in my opinion.
Sometimes you need a little bit of. Sometimes you need to be humbled. Last night I thought Charlo sounded great on that mic. Did you hear him last night as a broadcaster?
No.
Yeah, he sounded so relaxed, so calm. He actually did a great job, and that was coming off that poor performance against Matt Korobov, and of course after his brother lost the title to Tony Harrison. So maybe a little bit of humility changes you back into ground you a little bit, and that's what some fighters need at times. One question I want to ask you is, did you notice that there were a lot of fights that ended on a no contest due to vicious cuts?
Oh, I didn't like. I tell you, the one that I really didn't like was the Kisner fight, the one where Kisner was fighting Otto Wallen out of Sweden on the undercard of the Claressa Shields Christina Hammer fight. I can't see. Like I said earlier, Dax, unless there was something I couldn't see that he got, eyeball damage. The cut wasn't even bleeding that bad, and it was on the side of his eye. It wasn't even going into his eye. I think he tried to get out of the fight. As far as the other one with the other one was on the fight with Peter Quinlan.
Peter Quinlan and Caleb Trout.
Yeah, that's another one. That was more. That was more legit, but definitely.
The Diego De La Hoya and Enrique Bernach fight, that was a vicious cut. De La Hoya came in with his head and caught Enrique, and the doctor couldn't even get it to stop. I mean, literally, the doctor had to walk in from the center of the ring with his hand pinching that cut closed. That was vicious. I don't know, what are the odds that 3 fights on 3 separate cards were going to end like that?
No,
a main event, a co-main event, and one of the 2 co-main undercard fights. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen that happen before.
No, it was quite weird. It was definitely quite weird. Hey, we're going to let you go, but before we do, Dax, I just want to get your thoughts and predictions on a couple of the big fights for next week. Of course, we'll start off with Terence Crawford against Amir Khan. How do you see the fight going, and who's going to win?
I see, as most Crawford fights go early on, he's going to take those first couple of rounds to figure out his opponent. And once he does, he's going to go into Crawford mode. He's going to start out as a fighting orthodox, and then he's going to switch over to southpaw. And whenever he does that, that always seems to be the downfall for all his opponents. Amir Khan, as usual, he's going to come out. He's going to be very competitive early on. But Amir Khan, despite all his talent and his speed, and we won't even say his chin, he seems to lose focus after 6 rounds. But against Terence Crawford, I think it's going to happen a whole lot sooner, especially because Terence Crawford and Vasyl Lomachenko, as we stated before, are the number 1 and number 2 guys in the sport. They're not going to fight each other. They are under the same promoter, and there's more or less that rivalry on which of us is really number 1. And right now it all depends on whoever looks the most sensational in that fight where they're switching back and forth. So right now, Vasyl Lomachenko is most likely looked at number 1. When Terence Crawford fights Amir Khan, depending how dominant he is, he's going to want to dominate Amir Khan and look sensational, and he's going to want to jump back into that number 1 spot. And I think that's what we're going to see next week, and I think we're going to see Amir Khan viciously KO'd.
A couple of heavyweight fights that could, victories by these guys could get them in the mix. First, Andy Ruiz Jr. going up against Alexander Dimitrenko. How do you see that one going?
I think Ruiz Jr., Andy Ruiz Jr. is a very underestimated fighter. He always has been. I actually thought he beat Joseph Parker, and I think he got shorted in that fight. Yeah, he took some time off, and Alexander is way past his best, even though he's a lot bigger. He's not as active, and Andy Ruiz Jr. is a better boxer, so I think Andy Ruiz Jr. is going to win that one, and hopefully he stays active and he gets back into the mix.
David Allen against Lucas Brown. Lucas Brown trying to save his career at 40 years old, and Dimitrenko's been around so long. He's not even that old. It shocked me. But who do you like with David Allen and Brown?
Who knows? You're talking about saving careers. David Allen needs to save his career too.
I know. You're right. You're right.
But what's Lucas Brown really having a gas tank? Lucas Brown is a very basic fighter. His whole career has relied on the fact that he's very strong, but I think he's 40 years old now, isn't he? He might even be past 40 years old. So, David Allen, if he uses his youth and he boxes and he doesn't let Lucas Brown come in close, I'm going to have to say David Allen. But if he doesn't, then we have to say Lucas Brown.
So one of those 2 guys should win the fight, right?
One of the 2 should win, and one of the 2 should be, the victim of one of the top heavyweights after.
And one last fight I want to get your thoughts on. Derek Chisora. The guy he's got more lives in the sport of boxing than Freddy Krueger had on 13th Street. Sunid Gashi is who he's going up against. How do you see that fight going?
I think Derek Chisora is going to win that one. Derek Chisora is the guy that whenever you count him out, he does great. So I think, Derek Chisora is going to win that one. Derek Chisora, if he was a little bit bigger, if he was a little bit more composed, I think his career would be a little bit further off than it is right now. But, he's not a top 5 fighter or top 10 fighter, but he's certainly not a guy you want to dismiss at all.
No, I agree. All right, Dax, appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to you next weekend, brother.
All right, last thing's that, did you watch the DAZN card last night, the DAZN card?
Yeah, I did.
Did you catch Oscar De La Hoya? And he didn't really seem to be saying it just to try and kind of sell that when he said he thought that Canelo and Daniel Jacobs might be a 50-50 fight.
He said that. I heard him say that, but it is a 50-50 fight. I think it is a 50-50 fight. To be honest, you know, I'm not disrespecting either fighter, and I'm not going to say that Canelo is oodles above Daniel Jacobs, because Daniel Jacobs has proven that, you know, he has come along. I don't know. It's a couple weeks off, but I do think that's a 50-50 fight. I'm giving Daniel Jacobs more of a chance than people apparently are.
No, I just didn't know if you caught that or anybody else had happened to catch it out there. But, you know, like Bob Arum, you know, with Oscar, you got to say, you know, well, I was doing cocaine last week, but I'm not doing cocaine this week. You know, you never know what's coming out with Oscar's mouth, because it was just 2 weeks ago when he did say if Andre Ward wanted to come out of retirement and call Canelo out, Canelo would beat him as well. So you never know what's going to come out of Oscar's mouth.
Oscar is a promoter, and he's making some smart moves by, you know, if you think about and look back, he you know, we all thought that he was on the decline because his stable started shrinking. But the truth of the matter is some of the deals that he's made with the networks, we're starting to see a lot of his fighters all over the place, and I think that he's making some smart moves where some of these other promoters are staying fixed. Like the PBC is just dying a slow death right now. I mean, their lack of willingness to work with these big networks that are taking over, and you said yourself, like DAZN and ESPN Plus, etc. PBC is not gonna. They're not gonna withstand it. They're not.
No, like what I was about to say, the smartest thing that Oscar did, and I think a lot of people caught on with that, especially after the breakup with Richard Schaefer, is Oscar De La Hoya said, you know what, I'm going to start working with these promoters that we weren't working with a year beforehand. Remember, he started putting on events with Top Rank Boxing and so on. And, you know, he realizes, you know what, you can't build your promotion company and you're not going to make your fighters in your stable, especially if you have a high amount of fighters, into these megastars by just putting them against each other. You need other fighters from other promotional companies. Now Oscar's done that, and that's why he has stayed in the sport, and his company didn't fold when separation with Richard Schaefer and most of his fighters started banning him. So, you know, you have to give him credit for that much. I just like to make fun of him, but, you know, Oscar as a fighter and as a promoter, he's one of my favorite guys.
Dax, we'll check you next week, brother.
All right, everybody, enjoy the week.
That's Dax Khan. You can check him out up on the website, BillyCBoxing.com. Listen, before I take a break, I wanted to give a shout-out to my man Gonzalo in the chat room over on the YouTube. He's got us a super chat. He wants to know what we think about Teofimo Lopez claiming he's the money fighter and that he can beat Lomachenko, but that he really doesn't need him either. You know what I think of that? I think that is coming from a guy that just doesn't know. Teofimo Lopez is a young fighter. He's got a lot ahead of him. You know, he definitely needs a big fighter to beat. He's not ready for Lomachenko. Lomachenko, you know, the problem with these young fighters today is the path that most of them take. And it's not really the fighter's fault. They get coddled, they get hand-fed cupcake after cupcake. And in today's world of boxing, because of the sanctioning bodies and because of the breakup that they have, you basically, as a fighter, align yourself with one of the sanctioning bodies and you climb their rankings for your opportunities. Well, most of them, as long as you stay busy, will move you up in the rankings. So what you have is you have a fighter in his mind working out, working at the gym, listening to his team, and his team is getting him cupcake after cupcake, and he's winning and winning. He starts to believe his own press clipping, so to speak. And, you know, what happens is he takes on, especially with youth, he takes on a sense of invincibility. And that starts to blur the vision. This is a problem because it also prevents the development of a fighter. And we're talking about Jaime Munguia earlier, and this very well, not to the bold point that my man Gonzalo is making in the chat room, but, you know, a guy that relies on one thing that's been successful thinks that that's all he needs. You can make the argument for Deontay Wilder as well. So I think Lopez needs to progressively increase his level of opposition a little more, get some fan following a little more than what he's got before he could make those statements. So I appreciate Gonzalo with that. And if you're interested in a T-shirt, drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing. I'm referring to Gonzalo right there. So, hey, listen, I'm going to take a short break. When we come back, we're scheduled to have Alex Palli. So don't go nowhere.
Billy C will be right back.
Have osteoarthritis in one or both knees? If you have osteoarthritis in one or both knees, are you on Medicare, Obamacare, or other health insurance? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a prescription strength solution for osteoarthritis of the knees, covered by Medicare at little to absolutely no cost to you. We also offer a prescription strength topical pain relief ointment that can be used for pain experienced on other areas of your body. Our experienced staff will work with your doctor and handle all of your Medicare or insurance paperwork. Best of all, your prescription is shipped directly to your home for free. Will you qualify for a prescription strength solution for osteoarthritis of the knee or for a topical pain relief ointment covered by Medicare or private insurance at little or no cost to you?
Find out for free by calling the Back and Knee Pain Center at 1-800-604-1072. That's 1-800-604-1072, 1-800-604-1072.
Medical alarms for people who fall or have medical emergencies. You never think you'll need one until you do. Hi, I'm Lonnie Anderson for Advantage Alert. Today, our advanced systems locate and protect people inside and outside their homes, plus when they're on the road, allowing users with the press of a button to speak with an operator who can summon help. And even after 30 years, Advantage Alert's products remain amazingly affordable.
Call 800-985-1705.
Addiction is an epidemic in America. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, you need to call the R360 Network now.
I'm Ken Seeley, author, addiction recovery specialist, and former addict. R360 is a nationwide network of addiction recovery specialists that I personally selected and recommend.
The call is free, the consultation is free. If you have private insurance, your treatment could be covered with no out-of-pocket cost.
Call 800-705-0023.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Hey, fight fans, check out KOFantasyBoxing.com. KO Fantasy Boxing is boxing's only trademarked fantasy game. Check it out, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Select your own gym, your own fighters, track them through a season that can last from 3 months to a year, depending upon which league you join. You got to check this out, man, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Join it today. Again, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. And tell them Billy C sent ya.
The one, the only, Don King.
Makes me feel good, Billy, to have you, the #1 show in the country, talking boxing with Billy. So I invite each and every American that's listening to this great show to tune in, because we want you to be there with Billy and me.
Now back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C, the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C, damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
The undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C Show. Glad you could be with us. Hey, don't forget about our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week television network. That's right. You can catch replays of this show as well as all the other events we've done over the 15-plus years we've been doing this show. Just go to, it's on Roku and other major streaming services, but the easiest thing to do is go to GinicoUSA.com, GINIKO USA.com. Sign up for free and start checking out some of the other stuff that you may not know that we've done. Joining us right now, and all I could say is, yeah, it's happening, Alex. It happens to all of us. Our hair starts to go, and it just happens, and it's a shocking thing that you always say to yourself, no, that couldn't happen to me. I'm not going to be a George Costanza. No way. And then, and I'll tell you this, my man. The first time I realized it was with me was when I was with you. You and I were doing an event in Florida, and I was watching some of the replays, and I was like, hey, and the camera's was behind us. We were down doing that outdoor event in Florida, and I'm like, I said to the producer, who's that bald guy over there? He goes, what are you talking about? That's you. And I was like, oh no, from the camera, from the other angle, I never knew it. It is shocking. I can't help but notice that you're noticing yourself, huh?
Yeah, and it's strange. It's a point now. This bald spot here, the longer my hair gets, the more noticeable it is. It's this strange catch-22 that if I keep my hair short, you don't see it because my hair sticks up and it, you have directly in.
Hey, listen, you don't think I figured that out? Look at my hair. And what's even worse with me is on the camera, it looks like I have this little teeny piece right here, and it's like, but the headset makes it look even worse, so it is a little more uniform, but I'm a few years ahead of you in baldness, my man. But hey, before we get going with some of the other fights, I wanted to know what's your thoughts. I got a super chat from my man in the chat room asking about Teofimo Lopez, and I see that coach is saying that Top Rank is putting him on a pay-per-view. I believe he meant that he was a heavy main event. That's a mistake. They did the same thing to Terence Crawford, and I think that putting a young fighter on a pay-per-view too soon, like before they could be a success at it, kind of hurts their marketability. We were discussing just total overall marketability before with Dax. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, I would think that they would have to be very careful of when they demand extra money from a boxing fan, whether they be, a diehard like yourself or the ones you despise, those casual fan.
The casual.
Yeah. Oh, I know the hair. What's little left on your head stands up when I say casual boxing fan. Right?
That's right. They're all like serpents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I'm pretty sure. I thought I just saw him. I think he's on the undercard of Khan versus Crawford this weekend, which I think that's a good idea to put him on the undercard of a pay-per-view like that. You're right, but he has no business headlining a pay-per-view at this point. I like what he said about Lomachenko. I think he's kidding only himself, but you want to hear that out of a young, undefeated knockout artist. You want them to be bold. You want them to act like they could go into the the dinosaur graveyard and fight the biggest dinosaur. I think that that's cool that he sounds like that. But I think he's nuts at this point. Lomachenko is a monster. He's absolutely amazing. And, I mean, granted, even though Good Friday's next week, that was a crucifixion the other night. He's absolutely masterful. And now, I mean, they kept talking about it, so just in case you might forget, he once had a shoulder injury, and he certainly looks 100% since then. But yeah, I mean, the idea that a kid who's 8-0 is going to mess with that, I mean, come on.
He's the definition. Vasily Lomachenko and Terence Crawford, in my opinion, are the definitions of the sweet science. They're standing in front of you. You can't hit them. They're hitting you. It breaks you down mentally. They were making a point with the Anthony Crawford fight the other night. He was mentally broken down before he was physically broken down. And make no mistake, he was physically broken down too. And I thought it was interesting to hear. I think it was Dre. Dre Ward. I think he said Dre. That now he's Dre. He's Dre Ward. It used to be Andre, but now he's Dre. I don't know why they changed that, because the first time they referred to him as Dre, I think he was looking around wondering if there was somebody else as part of the broadcast. But whatever, okay. But the truth of the matter is that he said it best. He said, most people tell you to go to the body, then to the head. He says he goes to the head, then to the body, then to the head. And he says, what I mean is he breaks his opponents down mentally. And I agree with him. When you can't hit a guy that's just slapping you silly, and you're getting shots coming in from Manny Pacquiao angles, it's got to be discouraging.
Oh, yeah, and that's that anxiety level must be so high. Yeah, it is. Fear, one of the acronyms for fear is false evidence appearing real. And that is one of those things. In that first round, you couldn't help but think, Lomachenko was so close to him. That's the thing, that with that footwork, his footwork is ridiculous. He is so close to you, you hesitate because you don't... Krolla was like this, completely defensive for at least 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes of the first round. He was terrified to let anything go. He's so close on you that, boom, he's going to smack you. So, yeah, that level of pressure is it's a lot on a guy. And so not only are you trying to move to keep away from him, but also you're looking for your punching opportunities, knowing damn well as soon as you go to punch, he's going to hit you in the opening you create. So, yeah, the level of anxiety that he puts on a fighter is incredible. The thing about it, yeah, sure, he's the sweet science, but everybody's style is different. And his style, there's nothing about him that, is a defensive guy. He is all offense. He is right there creating punching opportunities. He doesn't let you breathe. It's amazing. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to see Terence Crawford try to challenge him in terms of, knockout of the month this week.
What I love the most about Lomachenko, and I agree with everything. I love the story. I love the father. I love the relationship. I love the approach. I love the comments. I love the fact that he's so confident. There's nothing not to love about Lomachenko. And it was funny to hear people criticize his last performance because he was coming off the shoulder surgery, etc. But my favorite thing he does, and I honestly don't recall anyone doing it as well as he does, or even as fluently as he does. And that is being able to pivot on his foot while he's avoiding a punch from his opponent and pivot around. Now, most fighters can pivot and get out of harm's way, but they continue on. Sort of like, in mathematics, a line continuing on forever. He pivots on his foot, and most fighters continue moving out of harm's way. He pivots, and instead of getting away from you, he's in another spot and he's landing shots on you. As a fighter that's in that ring with this guy, when he pulls that on you as flawlessly and as fluently as he does, and he's landing other shots, and they're not little pitter-pat punches, they're significant landing flush punches. That's got to make you say, "Oh my God, what's coming next?" I don't know. I think mentally, this is why this man has had so many fighters quit on their stool because they just figure that they don't have a chance. Why take the beating?
Yeah, it must seem preternatural because it's like you're fighting a mist full of punches. Because at one point it's there, and then seconds later, it's not even seconds, it's there. And yeah, how do you do that? There's a line in a U2 song, when love comes to town, I was a fighter, I could turn on a thread. And that's what great fighters can do, can make those angles, create angles by turning and, creating a new lane of attack against an opponent. And yeah, he's amazing at that. It just makes me wish that, we did get to see the Mikey Garcia fight. Hopefully maybe we still will. Because, you want a guy like that to have a good dance partner. And, all credit to Anthony Crolla. He tried, but, everyone who steps in that ring deserves our respect. But come on, there's levels here. And it's just there's very few people that are on Lomachenko's level.
Hey, listen, the old Abbott and Costello, trying when they holding the glove on the hand and you're swinging aimlessly. They tried too, but never hit the guy. But, hey, I just want to say this. There's a heated discussion going on in the YouTube chat room right now about pound for pound. And I just want to say this. The definition of pound for pound fighter, okay, at least the way I view it, maybe I'm wrong. And that's could be a possibility, but, maybe. But pound for pound was developed during the Sugar Ray Robinson era. The reason is because at that time we only had one world, and we only had one world champion in each weight class. And the main world champion during that era was the heavyweight world champion. If you were the heavyweight world champion, you were the baddest man on the planet. End of story. There was no discussion. There was no excuses. There was no woulda, coulda, shouldas. There was no one else except the number one contender who was vying to get a shot at that world champion. And, oh, by the way, there were only 10 top contenders, too. But that's a whole nother story. So they decided, hey, this guy is the greatest fighter of all time. We got to give him some kind of title. We got to give him something that people will recognize. And obviously he had titles, but just world recognition. So they came up with the pound for pound. Now fast forward it to the year 2019. The definition of pound for pound is still the same. It's an imaginary title. But the way it works, at least in my opinion, and Alex, I'm curious to hear yours as soon as I take a breath. But the truth of the matter is that it excludes the heavyweight. So pound for pound is every weight class but the heavyweight. Okay, and the thought that I always have is take a fighter, no matter what fighter. We're talking about Vasily Lomachenko now, so let's take him. Okay, and you keep the same attributes that he has. The same skill set, the way he pivots, the way he lands, his defensive prowess, the mental part, every part of his game. And that stays with him. And then you just change the maximum weight class he's in. Now remember, it's every weight class but the heavyweight division. That's why you can't say, oh, well, Klitschko, he would have been a great pound for pound fighter too. Well, not really, because his size is what gave him the edge over heavyweight. So the size isn't going to be that much of a factor in lower weight classes because you have to make the weight. So if you made Vasily Lomachenko a middleweight or a light heavyweight or even a heavyweight going the opposite direction, and he still maintained the skill set that he has, he's still a badass. And that's what makes him number one. Could you imagine Vasily Lomachenko as a heavyweight, Alex?
Oh my God. That would be terrifying.
I know. I would love it. But that's the way I define a pound for pound fighter. That's why you can insert guys like Manny Pacquiao or a Floyd Mayweather or anybody else, and give them other, just make them bigger. Take their body of work and their attributes and skill set and just make them bigger or smaller. They maintain it. Do they still dominate? And if the answer is yes, then they're a pound-for-pound fighter. I mean, that's the way I look at it. How do you look at it?
Yeah, I think that's a very a good definition of pound-for-pound. I think now, see, I agree with you that I tend not to include heavyweights. The only time I do would be, like, say, somebody like Roy Jones Jr.
Right.
when he beat John Ruiz, or like James Toney when he moved up and fought like Holyfield and Rahman. Guys like that could become even Evander Holyfield to some extent, because they weren't always heavyweights. because the heavyweight championship is the greatest prize in sports, and I still think of it that way, or I like to, I think of the heavyweight champion as like sort of a different animal. The pound-for-pound title is not for them. However, traditionally, that's not always the case, because I like that logic. That's the way I do it. I agree with you. However, when I look, one of my favorite writers we've talked about is Mike Katz, and he used to do pound for pound lists in his columns, and back in the 80s, it was very common for him to put a heavyweight in there. So I guess a lot of writers do. I don't. All that being said, I think boxing is about styles, and right now, I think two of the best fighters on earth, because of the styles, are Lomachenko and Tyson Fury. So,
well, Terence Crawford has got to be. Terence Crawford is a pound for pound. Listen,
those are my guys.
I'm just saying. But Tyson Fury, he's 7'4". I mean, you're not gonna be. He's a monster for his own division. You're not gonna see.
I'm not counting him as pound for pound.
Oh, okay.
Stylistically, that's a style nobody can cope with.
I got you. Okay. Thank you. The blood pressure started rising. Thank you.
I totally agree with you that in terms of pound for pound, we shouldn't be talking heavyweights, especially guys because Klitschko's. Joshua's, those guys that shatter the mold. I mean, come on. They are like in the 250-pound range, 6'5", 6'6". That's ridiculous. So yeah.
But you know what? You know what I do you know what I do with the heavyweight division? I put an asterisk next to it, because heavyweights of yesteryear, who were basically cruiserweights of today, I like to, fantasize if they were Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder size, and they maintained their attributes. How would they be? Like, for example, Jack Dempsey as a 6'7", Jack Dempsey, just add another 50 pounds on him and, a half a foot. How much of a destroyer would he have been? Or even a Rocky Marciano, or even a Jack Johnson. A Jack Johnson who was considered a monster in his era at slightly under 6'1". How bad of an ass would he have been at 6'7" or 6'8", something like that. So I'll do that. But could you imagine Jack Dempsey as Anthony Joshua's size?
Oh my God! Yeah.
It would be illegal. It would be illegal.
And I know this. Relax. I know this is going to make the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
Do I need to mute you?
Is the Rottweiler in the room?
Yes, he is. But he's on break. He's snoozing.
But I remember, and I think we might have talked about it on a show one time. It was years ago. But one of my favorite Floyd Mayweather Jr. performance is against Jesus Chavez. He really battered him. He looked amazing. And I remember talking about that fight, saying if there were heavyweights that fought like that, heavyweight boxing would be the most exciting thing in sports.
Oh, yeah.
Because those were like some of those last fights. What was that, 130 pounds, where Floyd looked like a monster.
Listen. Floyd, and I promised somebody in the chat room I wasn't going to bring him up, but Floyd, prior to him being Floyd, in other words, the first, 10 years, let me rephrase it. The last 10 years of Floyd's career was the cherry-picking, multi-million-dollar businessman Floyd. That's the Floyd I criticize. But I will agree with you that prior to his breakup with Top Rank, Floyd Mayweather was a talented, aggressive fighter, similar to a young Terence Crawford, etc. He did go in for the kill. His hands were weak and all of that. So it's not like I don't recognize his talent. It was what he did with it, and the pulling the mask over the fan's eye is what bothers me. He sells something that he doesn't deliver, and that's what bothers me. Anyway, let's get into some of these fights real quick. Come on, you're not taking over the show here, Alex. All right, just because you're losing your hair doesn't mean you take over the show. But as Jaime Munguia, is he going to get better? I mean, I like the kid. He seems like the kind of kid you want to follow and hope that he does well. I'm not seeing this guy improve, and I didn't see him win last night either, but that's another story. He got the win, but am I being too hard on him? What was your thoughts of the fight and how he's progressing?
I don't think you're being too hard on him at all. He was a 50-1 favorite, supposedly, against Hogan last night. He sure didn't look like it. I did not score that fight round for round, and I'm sorry to the audience. I've said that quite a few times lately. With all these apps, and especially when they're counter program, I try to watch them live, and it's very hard to, when you're doing that, going back and forth, to give a good scorecard.
Hey, you do realize that I said this to you before, but but listen, on the streaming services, as long as you subscribe, when the fight's over, it's there for you, Alex. It's built in DVR.
The hard thing about that is if you make the mistake of going on social media.
Nah, you can't do that though. Yeah, you can't do that. You got to shut all of that off. Hey, listen, you can't have it all. You can't have it all. You're only human, Alex. You can only retain and pay attention. So if you truly want to score these fights, just turn off the phone, turn off the tablet, watch the fights, and do your damn job. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly.
I mean,
close the door so the kiddies can.
Yeah, that's right, and leave their opinions out of it. But anyway, is he going to get better?
I hope he gets better, because now I don't know what the story was. If he underestimated Hogan, really good, was the most entertaining fight of the weekend. Although the Shields Hammer fight was a lot of fun to watch too, it was a lot more one-sided. I thought Hogan, it looked like he pulled it off, and I thought that I don't know. Like I said, I did not score it round by round, so I don't know how out of whack the scorecards are. In terms of what Hogan was doing, I thought he was being elusive when he needed to be. He rocked Munguia a few times.
One time he staggered him back. He went back like 4 or 5 steps.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. It's a fight I would definitely watch again. I think Munguia almost comes out of, I hate to kick them now that they're in the ground, but why not? He comes out of the HBO hype machine, I think. And I think that's what it looked like last night, is that this guy is not a 50-1 favorite. And maybe odds are crazy when they get out of whack like that. And maybe, I shouldn't be making such a big deal about it. But they made that seem like it was going to be another bloodletting. And it certainly didn't look like it.
That's because the odds makers don't know the sport. Boxing, I keep saying it, it's the only sport that you don't have to know anything about boxing to be involved in it. All you need is a couple of bucks. If you have a checkbook and there's money in the account, poof, you could be a trainer, you could be a promoter, you could be whatever you want. It's terrible. That is the problem of the sport. But yeah,
you could be a star overnight.
That's right. You could be a star overnight. How much you pay me? But the truth of the matter is that the judges scored the fight 115-113, 116-112, both in favor of Munguia, and then the third judge had it even.
One of the other things Munguia kept getting away with was banging him in the back of the head. I never liked to see that, and the referee never really scolded him thoroughly enough for that. That's such a dangerous foul.
Yeah, he does do that. I just think, his accumulation of punches and his punching power is his MO, but he's not that quick. He's not even that accurate with his punches. He needs to develop some defense. He needs to develop some movement. Otherwise, he's not going to stand a chance when he moves up. Let's talk about the female fight. Claressa Shields, Christina Hammer. Claressa Shields fights totally man style, which I love watching. She's a complete fighter. At least she was last night. I love Christina Hammer, but it was so obvious the contrast of styles and why that European, that classic European style. It's like during the Revolutionary War when we were fighting guerrilla tactics against the British, who were very organized and kneeling and doing everything by order, and it just didn't work. That's the way it was last night. Christina Hammer was fighting traditional stand-up, jab, power, and Claressa Shields just had her tied up like a pretzel. What was your thoughts of the fight?
Well, first of all, I love that analogy. I thought that she really dominated her, and it was really great to see that you could see her thinking strategically. That first round, she sort of gauged what am I being faced with, and she did give her credit at the end of the fight about how hard her jab is. And you're right. I mean, for much of Hammer's style had been predicated on a great jab. And she showed, I mean, there were a couple of the judges, they disagreed on what rounds they gave Hammer. I thought Hammer won the first, and I thought she won the sixth. One judge had it, one or two gave her the last round. But one of the things that I thought was intriguing was two of the judges actually scored the eighth, 10-8 for Shields. And she battered her pretty badly, pretty severely in that eighth round. She thought that they had thrown in the towel, and there was some confusion at the end of that round. But, to Hammer's credit, she finished the fight. I thought it was, I don't know, I'm not as hard on her as you and Dax. I think that that's her style. She's only 24 years old. She's a kid. And she has, I mean, with the amateur background, she has a tremendous amount of credibility to justify the boasting. I don't mind it because that was certainly her, Liston, her Sonny Liston moment where, but she didn't shock the world. I think a lot of people expected her to look that good. I don't know. I'm excited about her. I'm looking forward to seeing what else she does. I thought she looked incredible last night. The other thing that's really cool, because I like him as a trainer, is John David Jackson. I think that it's a tremendous feather in his cap because if you think about it, one of the last times we saw him in a high-profile training gig was with Sergey Kovalev. And now here he is with the best female fighter on earth. And I think they mentioned that was their fourth fight. It usually takes 3 or 4 fights for a trainer-fighter relationship to gel, and look how good she looked last night. And they really seem to have a nice simpatico there in the corner, their interaction. I don't know. I like Claressa Shields. Yeah, Shields, there is times where, you brace yourself. Well, what's she going to say? I don't mind that. It was a really good night for women's boxing.
Yeah, you go to the corner, and I have to admit with one of the announcers, I've never heard the fighter talking more than the trainer. And
yes, she's very
she
verbal.
never shuts up. She's
she doesn't.
I have someone I know that's like that. But in any event, let's talk a little about the fights next week. First and foremost, we got Terence Crawford going up against Amir Khan. A lot of people aren't giving Amir Khan much of a chance in this fight. You have to. Amir Khan's got punching power. Terence Crawford, you've heard me say he's a pound-for-pound guy, number one. What's your thoughts on the fight, Alex? How do you see it going, and who's going to win?
Yeah, I agree with you in terms, if there's any single fighter today who embodies the sort of spirit of Marvelous Marvin Hagler, it's the ambidextrous, Terence Crawford. He wants to hurt you. He wants to break you down. He can switch back and forth. And he knows that this is a blood sport. Amir Khan, he will look good for a couple of rounds, maybe 2 rounds. He's nice and speedy. He's going to need it. No, I don't give him much of a shot. I think Terence Crawford, it'll be sort of like trying to stop a high tide. And that's Amir Khan is out there up to his hips in water, and I think Terence Crawford is going to stop him within 6.
There's a couple of heavyweight fights on next week that could at least earn a couple of these winners, to be mentioned in a discussion of a possible title shot or a today we like to have elimination title fights. So you get an elimination to get a chance to you get a chance to fight in an eliminator.
Yeah.
To the possibility of getting a shot at one of the interim or champions in recess, which would, if you won that, you'd get a shot at one of the potential champions. And then if you won that, you might get a belt. And then if you win, I could go on, and we still won't have a champion. But nonetheless, Andy Ruiz against Alexander Dimitrenko, how do you see that fight going, and who's going to win?
I tell you, Billy C., one day I hope to grow up to be an eliminator.
Yeah.
It would be so great to be in an eliminator
Yeah.
bout.
Hey, what did you become a boxer for? My goal in life is to be an elimination bout.
I really want to be I think that's, I think Ruiz beats Dimitrenko. Dimitrenko is pretty long in the tooth. And I think, like we've been talking about that European style, he's certainly a good example of that. I don't know. There's still quite a gulf in the heavyweight division. I didn't get to see more than like 2 rounds of that heavyweight fight last night. But, that's the thing about heavyweight boxing is it's almost like a different sport. Steve Farhood has said that quite a bit, is that there's so much physicality to it that it is, watching 2 big guys glom on each other, you don't see that with the lighter weights. There's much more action. So it's that physical factor wears on the guys because that tires you out. So, of course, it affects what you're watching, but, it doesn't make what you're watching all that exciting.
No, it does not. Derek Chisora.
That's why when we get a great heavyweight fight, it's such an amazing thing because sometimes it is caca.
No, I know. Some other heavyweight fights, Dave Allen against Lucas Brown. Who do you like? Who? You like who?
Dave Allen. I don't think I can't remember if I've seen him. I don't know about that one.
And Derek Chisora.
I like one of those guys to win.
One of those 2 will win.
One of those 2 guys is.
You're right. Dax picked it the same way. He's. That's good. That's good. And Derek Chisora against Sinead Gasha. One of those 2 guys will win too, right?
Yeah, I tell you, I like Derek Chisora. He's certainly one of those guys who has been a factor in several really entertaining fights. He was in, the Takam fight last year. That was a great fight. I don't know if Gausha is somebody who's that name doesn't ring a bell, but if he's somebody they're expecting to beat Chisora or not. But I'd be interested to watch. Is that a DAZN fight?
Yeah, it is. It is next week. There's a bunch of fights, but Alex will be.
It's amazing. It really is a good time for boxing in terms of the stuff that's on.
Availability. The availability is there.
Yeah, the availability is incredible. It's sometimes the quality. I don't know. Some of these fights that, like the 2 supporting bouts last night on Showtime, I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's what we're getting now. When you get a marquee matchup as the main event, they can't afford to bring in any other ones. The Showtime, what was it? The Showbox, the Next Generation. That used to be so. They're trying to get back to that, where you had literally two up-and-comers equal, and they fought each other. I really like that series, but we'll see. I think DAZN and ESPN Plus are really coming into their own, and I like what it's producing. Alex, I appreciate you coming on. Next week we're going to make an announcement that's going to basically feature you and myself and others. So I'm looking forward to that, and then we can be real excited next week.
That sounds good. All right, Lucy, you have a great week.
You too. That's Alex Palli, and like I said, make sure you come by next week to hear the announcement that we will have for you. Very excited. All right, I'm going to give you my breakdowns and predictions on the fights next week. Terence Crawford against Amir Khan. I'll save that one for last. I'll go with Derek Chisora against Sunid Gashi. Derek Chisora is ranked number 13 in the world in the heavyweight division. He's got a record of 29 wins, 9 losses. 21 of his 29 victories have come by knockout. And of his 9 losses, he has lost 3 times. Keep in mind, he's also fought the best heavyweights in the division as a gatekeeper of sorts. He takes on Sunid Gashi, who's 28 years old. He's got a record of 17-2 with all of his wins coming by knockout, 17 knockouts. And of his 2 losses, he was only stopped once, and that was against Carlos Takam in his last fight in December of last year. I think that this is a typical Chisora-type fight. He's testing Gashi. If Gashi wins this fight, he'll get some opportunities. And if Chisora wins this fight, he'll earn himself not only another opportunity, but another decent-sized payday. I'm picking Derek Chisora in this fight. It's going to be an ugly fight, and that's exactly how Derek Chisora likes it. I'm picking Derek Chisora. The next fight I'm going to pick is David Allen against Lucas Brown. David Allen is ranked number 47 in the world in the heavyweight division. He's got a record of 16-4 with 13 knockouts. Of his 4 losses, he was stopped twice. There was a lot of fanfare about David Allen when he turned pro. He just hasn't lived up to the expectations. He steps in with a guy who was a former world champion in Lucas Brown, but his career has been tainted with the steroid use that he adamantly denies, but he tested positive not once but twice, was stripped, etc., etc. He's ranked number 26 in the world at heavyweight. He's 40 years old now, 28 wins, only 1 loss with 24 knockouts, and his loss was a stoppage at the hands of Dillian White. He was not himself in that fight at all, but then again, do we really know who Lucas Brown is, 40 years old? I don't think David Allen, even though he's considered the A side of this fight, I'm picking Lucas Brown. I think Lucas Brown's going to win this fight, and I think that he's going to get himself another big fight before he's done. Andy Ruiz Jr. against Alexander Dimitrenko. I've been very critical of Andy Ruiz and his physique. He has lost some weight, but he is a talented fighter. I think his height is what will prevent him from beating one of the top guys. Alexander Dimitrenko, like I mentioned before, even though he's only 36 years old, he's been in some tough fights. He's got a record of 41 wins and 4 losses with 26 knockouts, but he was stopped 3 times of his 4 losses. In the heavyweight division, he's ranked at number 38. Andy Ruiz, he's 31 wins and 1 loss, 20 of his wins coming by knockout. His loss came at the hands of Joseph Parker, and like Dax said earlier, you could make the argument that he won that fight. Number 19 in the heavyweight division. Listen, I think this is an important fight for Andy Ruiz. I think a win over Dimitrenko gets him a title shot again, or a rematch with Joseph Parker would be interesting as well. Both of them needing to get a win. I'm picking Andy Ruiz. The next fight I'm going to pick is the Danny Garcia return. He's taking on Adrian Granados. Granados is ranked number 22 in the welterweight division. He's got a record of 20 wins with 6 losses. And of those 6 losses, he was never stopped. He's a tough guy for sure. 14 knockouts of his 20 wins. He's 30. He's 20, how old is he? I don't know how old he is, but he is a fighter that is just known for his toughness. He takes on Danny Garcia, former 2-divisional world champion. He's ranked at number 5 in the world at welterweight. He's 34-2 with 20 knockouts. He's 31 years old, coming off his 12-round loss to Sean Porter in September of last year. This is not a layup fight for Danny Garcia, but it's a win. And finally, the big fight of the weekend, in my opinion, it's on pay-per-view. Terence Crawford against Amir Khan. Like I said with Alex a little earlier, Amir Khan, a lot of people aren't giving him a chance, but he's a good fighter. Make no mistake. He's got punching power. He's got hand speed. He's got accuracy. He sells tickets. Amir Khan is ranked number 10 in the welterweight division. He's an orthodox fighter with a 33-win and 4-loss record. Of his 4 losses, yeah, you could pretty much say that his weakness is the fact that he gets stopped. He was stopped 3 times of his 4 losses. 2 of those 3 times against top fighters, and 1 against a guy that we thought was a top fighter that never really amounted to anything after his knockout of Amir Khan. And, of course, I'm talking about Prescott. Of the 33 wins by Amir Khan, 20 came by knockout. His last fight was a 12-round decision over Sam Vargas, and that took place in September of last year, 7 months ago. Like I said, Khan's an orthodox fighter, number 10, 32 years old, 5'8.5". He has the privilege of stepping in the ring with who I think is tied for number 1 pound for pound in the world today, with Vasily Lomachenko, and that, of course, is one of my favorite fighters of today. Terence Crawford clearly has a mean streak, takes care of business. Love the guy. If you've never seen him fight, if you don't like watching Terence Crawford fight or a guy like Vasily Lomachenko, then you're not a boxing fan. Terence Crawford's ranked number 1 in the world at welterweight. And I agree with that ranking. Some people think Spence is, Errol Spence Jr. I don't think so. I think Mikey Garcia proved that by taking him the distance, even though Spence was bigger and stronger. Crawford's last fight was his last fight was a 12-round TKO over Jose Benavidez Jr. in October of last year, 6 months ago. He's 34-0, 25 knockouts. He's 31 years old. He is 5'8", southpaw. You know, I get into an argument a lot about Terence Crawford. A lot of people don't respect his resume. Well, the truth of the matter is, if you look at his last 15 fights going all the way back to 2013, he has beaten top opposition. And you have to look at the opposition at the time when he fought them. That's why I think he's as good as he is. This is not a guy that you look at the current records of these fighters. These fighters have been ruined, in a sense, by Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, when he first busted onto the scene, he was brought in as an undefeated fighter from Nebraska. Nobody thought this guy was very good. After all, Nebraska is not known for producing some great fighters. So they thought he was just a built-up, running that west, mid-central west, I guess you could call it, plains, if you will, circuit. And he was brought in as an opponent, and he upset the apple cart, won the fight. Was brought in as an opponent the next time, upset the apple cart, won the fight. And finally, the third time, brought in as the B-side, upset the apple cart, won the fight. Then the powers that be finally decided, hey, this guy's pretty good. And he's been on the A side ever since, and he's made his claim to fame. I'm thinking that this is going to be an exciting fight. I do think it's going to be an entertaining fight for a few rounds. Then Terence Crawford's going to do what he does. He's going to move in and destroy Amir Khan. I think he wins by stoppage, and I agree with Dax Khan. I think it's going to be a brutal stoppage. I'm picking Terence Crawford over Amir Khan. Listen, boys and girls, thanks for joining us today. We'll be looking forward to you tuning in next week. We do have a big announcement. We will talk about all the results from these fights. And like always, Make sure you catch up during the week on all of the past shows. And don't forget to give the television channel a new shot. I think you're going to love some of the stuff that's on, especially Saturday and Sunday afternoons. We got the replays of some of the big events we did. So check out the Billy C. Boxing Television Network on Roku. Best thing to do is go to Giniko USA. Giniko, Giniko, USA.com. Remember, tune in next time. Same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby.